environment. I said that environment is having four different components, which is atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, and biosphere. So we have seen the small definitions of this four different components, and we have understood what and all are the components that are present in each of these spheres of the environment. And then we have seen about the scope and importance of environmental studies. We have understood what is the importance and what is the scope of you as engineers studying environmental education or getting aware about the environment related issues. We have understood that. And then I gave 6 different objectives of the environmental education. So what are the 6 different objectives? The first one is awareness, knowledge, attitude, skills, evaluation ability, and participation. These are the 6 different um, objectives of environmental education, and the reason why this subject is being introduced, so that you can get aware about the problem, and then you develop knowledge about the problem, and then you start developing that right kind of an attitude for uh, to be able to serve the society and protect the environment using your technical skills. Then we have understood that you are going to develop skills, right? As engineers, you are going to develop skills for developing such kind of technologies which are going to be eco-friendly. Then you are going to understand or develop the property called as evaluation ability, right? And then last but not the least, you are going to develop that nature or attitude of participation, which is a very, very important requirement for protection of the environment. Now, I have even explained about this particular picture at the center of our college campus, which stands for World Environment Day. And I told about the reason why tree is given such an important position, why a human hand is also given such an important position in the environment and environmental cycle. So I explained about it. I hope you can recollect and remember. If you have any doubt what I told, you can play back the previous lecture 1 video. Then we have seen about the role of an environmental engineer, right? I told that as an environmental engineer, or any engineer for that matter, whoever does or uses his or her technology for or technical knowledge for betterment of the society and betterment of the environment, they can by default be called as environmental engineers. And as environmental engineers, we have seen different roles that you are going to play. We have seen that you are going to be addressing the problems of pollution, population growth, rapid industrialization, and urbanization. And I think I explained about the last point, which is very, very important point, where you have to develop such technologies which are going to be having assimilating capacity with lithosphere, atmosphere, and hydrosphere. Please do remember this. I can be asking multiple choice questions also. As an engineer, you have to develop such technologies which are having assimilating capacity with which of these, right? You have to develop technologies which are having assimilating capacity with lithosphere, atmosphere, and hydrosphere, right? When can you develop a technology which is having an assimilating capacity with the lithosphere or atmosphere or hydrosphere? When it is causing, when your technology is not causing any damage to those three components. And when can your technology not be causing any damage to those components? When you ensure that you are using your skills in the right way, which can be which will not be causing any damage to the environment, or by default the other name that you can give for such a technology which is having good assimilating capacity with the lithosphere, atmosphere, and hydrosphere, right? One single word that you can give for such a technology is called as eco-friendly technology. So as an environmental engineer, it is expected that you develop such technologies which are eco-friendly in their nature. So continuing the rules, as an environmental engineer, you are going to design technical solutions for the problems. Then you are going to keep in mind to protect the natural resources from the effect of different kinds of hazardous waste or toxic chemicals or radioactive waste, and the damage that they can cause to the environment. And you are going to play a specific role of having good coordination with other technocrats and engineers. I think I gave an example here, right? No engineering, plant or an industry can run with one specialization or one person with a one particular kind of specialization. Everybody plays an important role when you are planning or thinking about a bigger scenario of environment treatment plants or any industries of that sort, right? The scale is going to be very big, and the participation from different parts of the engineering streams is going to be helpful. And you also can be part of such a bigger team which can be developing such technologies which are going to be friendly for the environment or taking environmental concerns into consideration. The basic challenging role of an environment engineer is to make public aware, right? So the last point that I told in the last class was, as an environmental engineer or as a learned engineer for that matter, you are going to play a very important role in educating the society, right? As I told you in the last class, there is a difference between a normal human being trying to educate a person and an engineer educating a person, right? So please don't think that only teachers need to educate the society, right? Anybody can educate anybody on this earth, right? So as engineers, you should also take up that additional responsibility of teaching the people around or educating the people around, right? So you should be able to educate the people around and sensitize the people around and tell that the importance of environment and importance of protection of the environmental components, so that the future generations are going to be happy. So this was what we have discussed in the last class. I just gave a preview. So let us try to continue with the next concept of ecosystem. Right? You can see this picture. This is something that you would have seen from your childhood, or this is something that you have drawn also from your childhood, right? Anybody asks you to draw something, the first thing that you would have done in your childhood, I'm pretty sure you would have done what you would have done is you would have put two mountains and a sun in between the mountain, and you would have put a water body, and you would have put a boat, you would have put some birds, right? This was something that is imprinted in our mind. That scenery, whatever you say, is something that is imprinted in our mind, and that is nothing but an ecosystem, right? You can see this picture, almost a similar kind of a picture you would be imagining whenever you think about a scenery, right? But I'm not explaining about scenery here. I am here to explain you something called as ecosystem, right? Ecosystem, you can see the definition, is a community of living organisms, and those living organisms are not individually living, they are in conjunction with the non-living components, right? So community where you can see living organisms existing along with the non-living components of the environment, and both of them are interacting as a system. When the living organisms are present along with non-living components, and both of them are interacting as a system, that becomes an ecosystem, right? So please follow the definition very carefully. Community of living organisms in conjunction means along with the non-living components of the environment, interacting as a system, is nothing but ecosystem. You can see in this picture very clearly, there are a lot of living components, living organisms, and there are a lot of non-living components. You can see what are all the living organisms that you can see there. You can see the first thing, that bird, that trees, that kangaroo, or the insects that is mentioned there, or the termites inside the hill, or the bacteria or planktons or crabs or protozoans, might be fishes, right? Fungi, the grass, all of them are living, right? They are all existing. And along, you can see they are not alone. Living things are not alone. Many non-living things are also there in this, like the sun and the heat, sky, air in the sky, right? You can see the water as such, soil, right? All of them are non-living components. And you see the word here, conjunction. They are going to exist coexist with each other, right? So you cannot imagine just living things existing or just non-living components existing. Both are going to exist together and they are going to interact with each other. They are going to interact with each other and they are going to form a system, and such a place where there is an interactive relationship that is existing between the living components and the non-living components is called as an ecosystem, right? So definition once again: a complex relationship between all the living and the non-living things. Right, in brackets you can say plants, animals, organisms which are all living, sun, water, climate which are all non-living. So such an interaction between the living and the non-living things is called as an ecosystem. And you can see here very important definition which I'm going to ask in multiple choice question. Ecosystems are the foundations of biosphere and they maintain the natural balance of the earth. Please do understand this very carefully. They are the foundations of the biosphere. Now recollect the first diagram that I have shown. Where is biosphere present? Biosphere is represented in the form of a circle right at the center, right? So what the environmentalists say is that biosphere which is there in the center, which is a circle that is being represented in that picture, is having some foundation stones, right? Just like a wall. What is the foundation stone for a wall? It is an individual brick, isn't it? Individual bricks join together to make a wall. So the same way, the brick with which the biospheres are constructed is called as an ecosystem, right? So ecosystems are going to join together. Many ecosystems join together forms a biosphere, right? So what are those types of ecosystems we are going to subsequently see, but first you understand that, you remember that ecosystems are the foundations of biosphere and they are responsible for maintaining the natural balance of the earth. So there is a balance that exists. What is that balance? We are going to see subsequently. So that balance maintenance is primarily done by the foundations of the biosphere, which is called as a ecosystem. This is the picture looks a little complicated, but don't worry about it, right? Which is something that tells about the different types of ecosystem. A very important slide for me to explain, so that you can face at least I can say at least 6 to 7 different types of questions, multiple choice questions I will be asking from this particular slide. So friends, hear very carefully, because one good hearing is enough for you to remember these concepts. Ecosystem is basically divided into two categories, classified into two different categories: natural ecosystem, artificial ecosystem. So natural ecosystem and the artificial ecosystem are the primary level of classifying the ecosystems, right? This is the first way that you have to look at. So I'll discuss about natural ecosystems a little later. What are artificial ecosystems? So artificial ecosystems are man-made ecosystems. So if you are getting a doubt what is an example of an artificial ecosystem, simple example that I'm going to give you is simplest example that I can give is Wonderla. So very simple example of a typical artificial ecosystem. So whatever you see in Wonderla, like the termite hill or water splashing water or wave pool or waterfalls, that is whatever that you see in the Wonderla is all artificial. It's all man-made. Nothing is natural, right? It's actually a very plain land, and on the plain land people have invested, those people have invested and they made that industry. That is an artificial ecosystem. So I'm not concerned about artificial ecosystem right now. That's a big industry, there is no doubt about that. But my concern majorly is to make you understand about something called as natural ecosystems. Now, natural ecosystems are of two different categories. Natural means something that is by nature there. And natural ecosystems, please do remember, natural ecosystems are very primitive. right? Natural ecosystems cannot be made in a day or two like an artificial ecosystem, right? You cannot gauge from when these natural ecosystems had been existing, right? For example, I'll ask you, can you tell from when Kaveri was there, or Ganga was there, or Narmada was there? Can you answer them? It's impossible, right? It dates back to many centuries ago. So natural ecosystems are very very primitive. They are the oldest, we can say, right? That natural ecosystems are broadly classified into two different categories. One is aquatic, the other one is terrestrial. So I'm pretty sure you know about the names, right? Aquatic stands for water, right? Aqua means water. So natural ecosystems which are water based are called as aquatic ecosystems, and ecosystems which are earth based, right? Earth based, which are based on the earth, are called as terrestrial ecosystems, right? So that actually, needless to say, for all these words that you are seeing, no, natural, artificial, aquatic, terrestrial, freshwater, all these things, you please put a suffix ecosystem: natural ecosystem, artificial ecosystem, aquatic ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystem. So what I was telling you, so natural ecosystem is of two different types: aquatic ecosystems and terrestrial ecosystems, which means water-based ecosystems or earth-based ecosystems. Or the other names for these two is hydrosphere-based ecosystems and lithosphere-based ecosystems. So, if you recollect once again the diagram one, the three different spheres of the environment, the first three different spheres of the environment is atmosphere, hydrosphere, and lithosphere. So, you can see natural ecosystems can be of two different categories, which is hydrosphere based ecosystem, which is also called as aquatic, and the other one is lithosphere based ecosystem, which is also called as terrestrial. One question you can ask me: what about atmosphere? Why there is no ecosystem which is based on air, which is atmosphere? The answer for that is very, very simple. Hydrosphere cannot exist as an individual ecosystem by itself. It will be combined in both of them, which means both in aquatic ecosystem and in terrestrial ecosystem, you can imagine that the by default component that is there along with aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems is air. So you cannot imagine aquatic ecosystem alone without air. At the same time, you cannot imagine terrestrial ecosystem also without air. So air is a compulsory component with both of them. That is what you need to understand. So that water based ecosystem, which is aquatic ecosystem, is once again divided into two categories. One is called as freshwater ecosystem, the other one is called as marine ecosystems. So needless to say, I think you would have all heard these two names: freshwater ecosystem, marine ecosystem. What is the major difference between freshwater ecosystem and marine ecosystem is where freshwater is such a kind of ecosystem, such a kind of aquatic ecosystem where water is consumable, water is human consumable, whereas marine marine ecosystem is where water is not that easily consumable because of the highest salinity of this particular water. So marine ecosystems are where the water is very saltish, it's not easy for consumption, but freshwater is where water is potable and water is consumable. So first let us see the different categories of freshwater. Freshwater ecosystem, which is pure water and consumable water ecosystems, are of three different sub-ecosystem types, categories. You can see freshwater ecosystem where the water is static, freshwater ecosystem where the water is moving, and wetland ecosystem, where the water is not there as such, but the land is wet. So those three different categories of the freshwater ecosystems are called as lentic ecosystem, lotic ecosystem, and wetland ecosystem. So you can see lentic ecosystem. Lentic ecosystems are those freshwater ecosystems where the water is static. Please do remember this very, very carefully. This is where I am going to twist many multiple choice questions. So lentic ecosystem is a type of freshwater ecosystem. Lentic ecosystem is where the water is static. The best example is ponds and lakes, right? You can see ponds and lakes. You can't imagine water flowing in ponds and lakes. The water is static there. Once it rains, the water comes and deposits there and it gets dried there only. That is what is a lentic ecosystem, where you can imagine examples like ponds and lakes. The second one is where water can flow, right? Flowing freshwater ecosystems are called as lotic ecosystems. All your rivers and the streams of the rivers can be the best examples that you can imagine here. You name any river, all of them are lotic ecosystems. What is the third category of ecosystem? Wetland ecosystem. Freshwater, the third category of freshwater ecosystem is called as wetland. As the name indicates, it is a normal land, just like your normal land on which you walk and do your things. It's a normal land like that, but it is always wet. Wet to such an extent that if you put your leg on that land, your leg is going to get stamped inside and deep inside, and it is going to form a hole. A little deeper if you go, you can touch water there, right? They are called as wetlands, and such an ecosystem is called as wetland ecosystem, where you won't see water as such either flowing or static, but always the land is wet there. And there are living things that exist in that ecosystem. Means, please once again recollect, ecosystem means where you can imagine living things and non-living things existing. So in lentic, lotic and wetland, or rest of the things that I'm going to tell, all of these places, all of these are individual ecosystems, which means they are all individual building blocks of the biosphere, right? So in all of these lentic, lotic or wetland, in all of them you can imagine living things and the non-living things, right? So even wetland ecosystems also, the best examples that you can imagine are marshes and swamps, right? Marshes and swamps. But one thing that you need to very carefully remember is wetland ecosystems doesn't exist everywhere. Wetland ecosystems generally are seen in the banks of the rivers. Generally are seen in the banks of the rivers, right? There will be a very big river flowing. In the bank of the river, there will be few acres of land that forms into a marsh. That is what is called as a marsh or a swamp. And people go for fishing there also, right? It looks like a land, but inside the land, a little hole if you make, you can catch fishes there. Such lands are called as wetland ecosystems. I think in YouTube and all, you would have definitely seen videos where in Thailand and all, they will go to this marshy area. They will put there will be a guy who comes with a coke bottle and Mentos, right? He mixes Mentos and coke. It will foam a lot, and he will put into that hole, right? The moment he puts Mentos and coke, mix it together into the hole, fishes, especially fishes like eel fish, right? Eel fishes. Those fishes which are having a long mustache, right? Those fishes automatically come out. That's how they catch the fishes. That is a typical example of a wetland ecosystem. So these are the first category of aquatic ecosystem. The next category of ecosystem is where the water is highly saline, saltish water, and that ecosystem is called as marine ecosystem. And marine ecosystem is once again of three different categories. One is the coastal areas. You can imagine coastal areas like estuaries or coral reefs or mangroves, right? The second one is upwelling region. The third one is open oceans, right? So, what are coastal areas, right? What is the difference between a coastal area and an ocean? Please follow it very, very carefully. Coastal areas are those regions or those belts that will be joining or attaching with one particular country, right? For example, with India you can see east coast and west coast, right? They are all attached with the our country's border. You can imagine from Kanyakumari down up to Visakhapatnam, Vijayawada. You can imagine there is a big coast, right? Same is the way on this side. You can imagine up to Bombay, from Kerala, that on to the top up to Goa. You can imagine there is one big coast. So coastal areas, right? They are all east coastal area, west coastal area. They are all in the coast of a country. That's why they are called as coastal areas, because they are in the coast. Means they are in the border of a particular country. And ecosystem that exists in that coastal area is called as coastal area ecosystem. What is an ocean, open ocean, right? We'll see the upwelling region later. What is an open ocean? The difference between the coastal area and open ocean is coastal areas will be in the coast of a particular country, whereas open ocean is much bigger. The size of open ocean is much, much bigger. So if I ask a question, in between coastal areas and open oceans, which is a bigger water body, you have to answer you have to understand that the answer is open ocean, because oceans extend between two different countries. You can imagine oceans as such big bodies that they can divide two countries. For example, Atlantic Ocean, right? Indian Ocean, right? They divide two different countries. That is the size of a ocean, right? So oceans are much bigger, and the ecosystem there is also different, whereas coastal area is not as bigger as an ocean, but they are along the border of the entire country that you can imagine. That's the reason it is called as a coastal area, right? And what is the third category? The third one is called as upwelling regions, right? You don't see upwelling regions in our country, but deep regions like Amazon or any of those places, if you can, especially African belt, you can imagine upwelling regions where water flows from the lower lying areas to the higher lying areas, and that is a different type of an ecosystem altogether where life exists. And all of these are different types of ecosystems. All these 6 categories are the types of aquatic ecosystems, and each of them have their own components of living and non-living. For example, the fishes that you find in a lentic ecosystem, you cannot find in a lotic ecosystem. The fishes that you find in a lotic ecosystem, you cannot find in a wetland ecosystem. The fishes that you find in freshwater, you cannot find in a marine ecosystem at all, right? Because marine ecosystems will have very big fishes compared to what you see in freshwater. Marine ecosystems will have dolphins, or you can see sharks, such things, right? Much, much bigger. So you cannot imagine whatever living things that are seen in the marine ecosystem can be existing here also. No, right? This has its own set of living things and non-living things. This has its own set of living things and non-living things. That is the beauty of this environment that you need to understand. But both of them are aquatic in their nature. Getting it? So all of them are aquatic only. All of them are all of these are water based, but they are all different with reference to their compositions. That's why this is one brick, this is another brick, this is another brick, this is another brick, this is another brick. They are all individual bricks together, which makes a wall called as biosphere. Getting it? Same way, the next category of ecosystem is called as terrestrial ecosystem. Terrestrial ecosystem, which is all land-based ecosystem, is once again of three different categories. One is grassland, desert, forest. Grassland, desert and forest. Right? What is the difference between them? You can see grassland ecosystem is where whatever the land that we are existing on, we are living on or walking on or surviving on, is a typical example of a grassland ecosystem where you can see plain plateaued land surface. That is a grassland ecosystem. It's plain. It's normal plain land. Apart from the normal plain land, the next biggest kind of terrestrial land-based ecosystem that you can imagine is a desert, where you can totally imagine a different type of a ecosystem. Desert is where you don't have a plain land at all. Even if the land is there, it is all very loomy, it is very sandy, soil is not having a holding capacity at all, groundwater content is almost nil, right? Desert is a typical kind of a ecosystem, but it is a terrestrial ecosystem. It is a typical kind of an ecosystem. The next extreme kind of an ecosystem that you can imagine on the earth is forest, right? So completely different, three different types of land-based ecosystems are there. One is the land that we are on, which is called as grassland. The next one is the desert. The next one is forest. Getting it, friends? So just try to remember these things as much as possible, right? Here we are going to get at least three to four different types of questions that you can imagine. I hope all of you understood this particular types of ecosystem. Irrespective of the type of the ecosystem, right? Like we have seen 6 different or 7 different categories of ecosystem that we have seen just now. Irrespective of the types of the ecosystem, all the ecosystems are having this typical kind of a structure, which is almost common for all the ecosystems. One or two examples might be different, but by large, any ecosystem, I mean to say, it can be aquatic ecosystem or terrestrial ecosystem. Under the aquatic ecosystem, it can be freshwater ecosystem or marine, or under the terrestrial, it can be grassland or forest or desert. Irrespective of the type of these blocks or the types of the ecosystem, all of the ecosystems has this common structure of having two major different types of components. One of the major components that you can imagine under the ecosystem is abiotic components. The second category is called as biotic components. Now, friends, as the name indicates, abiotic components, abiotic components is that components where life doesn't exist, or they are, in other words, they are called as physical factors. Abio, non-living. Abio means non-living components. By another name for non-living components, they can also be called as physical components or physical factors, are called as abiotic components. And biotic components, biotic means bio, life, living components. So once again, non-living components and living components are technically termed as abiotic components and biotic components. So any ecosystem will have both the non-living components and the living components. Non-living components are called as abiotic components and living components are called as biotic components. And those non-living components is once again of two different categories. You can see one is climatic, the other one is edaphic. What is the difference? Climatic is where the components are all climate based. They are all climate related factors like rain, light, wind, temperature. They are all climatic in their nature, climate related. Whereas edaphic is where you can see components like soil, pH, minerals, topography, they are all structural components. Edaphic components are all such physical components which are all structural in their nature, means they give some kind of a shape, soil, pH, minerals, topography, they give different types of shapes to the environment, but they are all physical, they are all non-living in their nature. So this is a big category called as abiotic. What is biotic? You can see the biotic is also a very big component, which is where you can imagine living components that is present. Now, why biotic components are so complicated is because of the number of categories that you can imagine there. You can see biotic components can be of three major subcategories. I'm sure all of you have heard these names earlier. First one is called as producers, also called as autotrophs. Second one is consumers, also called as heterotrophs. Third one is decomposers, also called as saprotrophs. Producers are also called as autotrophs. Autotrophs, they are called as autotrophs because auto means they can, trophos means producing food, trophos means feeding. That which can feed themselves, who can feed, which can feed themselves, which can produce food by themselves. And which are those components which can produce food by themselves? They are nothing but trees. That's why green trees or plants, they are called as producers, or also they are also called as autotrophs because they can produce food by themselves. And I'm sure you know the reason how they can produce the food by themselves. I'm sure you heard about the concept called as photosynthesis, right? Because of the process called as photosynthesis. How they can do photosynthesis? Because they have a pigment called as chlorophyll. So they have chlorophyll in their leaves which can absorb sunlight and which can produce food by themselves in the form of glucose. I'm pretty sure you all have heard this in your PUC or your 10th standard also. So those autotrophs are producers which can produce food by themselves. The second biggest category is consumers. Consumers are also called as heterotrophs, right? So autotrophs is where they produce food by themselves. Heterotrophs is where they depend on something else for food. They depend on something else for food. So because they depend on something else on food, trophos means feeding, hetero means other. So feeding on others for their food, they are called as consumers. Then decomposers. One or the other day, both the producers and consumers will die. One or the other day, these both have to die, will die. After they die, biotic components, which are the first two categories, which are very big family, what will happen if they die? Right? They will not go for a waste. They will return back to the ecosystem and the cycle continues. And the returning back of these producers and the consumers which are dead is happening because of this. It is called as a decomposers. That's the name they are given. They're called as a decomposers. They are called as decomposers because they can decompose the dead tissues or dead plants or dead animals, right? They can decompose. That's the reason they are called as decomposers. Technically, they are called as saprotrophs. Trophos means once again feeding. Saptro means dead. So something that can feed on the dead matter is called as saprotrophs. The best examples of saprotrophs are your bacteria or fungi, right? So you can imagine, for example, any animal dies and it is there on the road, right? After a few days, if you see, it will decompose slowly. There might be bacteria and virus, fungi that will be growing inside, and they will slowly disintegrate. And the dog that you have seen lying on the road dead, after a few days you won't see it existing at all because of the decomposers, right? The decomposition can happen, and it will mix the dead matter along with the soil. So that is what the decomposers do. Actually, decomposers help the environment a lot. So out of these three different primary components that you can see in the biotic components, which are the producers, consumers, and decomposers, consumers is understood to be a very big family because consumers are of 4 different subcategories. You can see the irony here. Here only you will understand. Producers are very less. The components which are producing the food are very less. The components which are consuming the foods are very, very high. This is the very important point that I can. This is enough for you to understand how important is it for you to protect a tree. Friends, you are understanding, right? This itself will make you understand how important it is to conserve the tree for us, because the consumers are so many. What are those consumers? Let us see. Consumers are of 4 different categories. Primary consumers means that consumers which depend on immediately, they depend on producers. The immediate consumers that come immediately after the producers are called as primary consumers, because they are such you know organisms or animals that you can imagine. They are such things which cannot eat anything at all. They can eat only plants and the plant products. They are called as primary consumers, also called as herbivores. For example, your cow or goat or all those things, right? Herbivores. They cannot eat anything else. They cannot eat the other animals. They cannot uh, predate anything. They cannot they cannot go for hunting, and they cannot find food. They are something that depends on producers for their food. They are called as primary consumers or herbivores. Secondary consumers are those consumers which are dependent on primary consumers, right? Secondary consumers are those consumers which are dependent on primary consumers, and those secondary consumers are called as primary carnivore. This is the first place you are going to see the term called as carnivore. Please do understand, carnivores are those living organisms or components, living things that you can imagine in the biosphere, where they can eat the other living things. So any animal that can eat the other living animal is called as a carnivore, right? And primary carnivores are those carnivores which are dependent on primary consumers. Tertiary consumers are called as large carnivores, which are dependent on secondary consumers and primary consumers. Right? They are called as tertiary consumers, are also called as large carnivores. What are quaternary consumers? They are called as omnivores. They can eat any of these things. They can eat the producers also, right? They are the quaternary consumers. They are also called as omnivore. What is the best example of an omnivore? Human being, right? Because we can eat large carnivores, we can eat primary carnivores, we can eat a herbivore, and we can eat an autotroph also. That's why we are quaternary consumers, right? Whereas you can imagine here your lion, tiger, and all, they can be called as tertiary consumers. Your dog, cat, and all, they can be termed as primary carnivores, and so on and so forth, right? These examples you are going to subsequently see in the later sections in different what is it called as food chains. We are going to see there. But for now, this is a very, very important slide for all of you to understand about the basic structure of an ecosystem and the different subcategories of the abiotic and biotic components that you can imagine under a ecosystem. I hope you have understood this. So what we have to understand next is the relationship that exists within an ecosystem. Now, ecosystem, as I already told you, is where you can imagine the coexistence of the living and the non-living things. So, even if the living things and the non-living things are coexisting, there is always an interaction between them. There is always a interaction between them. And the entire process of the ecosystem, everything starts from one of the abiotic component or the non-living component, which is nothing but sun. So you can imagine how important solar energy is because the entire processes of the ecosystem starts with the sunlight. So that solar energy that is present in the that is present as a physical component or abiotic component, that solar energy which is present as a abiotic component in the ecosystem is responsible for primarily giving the energy which is absorbed by plants. So plants absorb the solar energy. They do something called as photosynthesis, right? So energy from the sun is absorbed by the plants and it is going to produce the energy in the form of glucose by virtue of a process called as photosynthesis. This energy from the plants is taken up by the herbivores eaten by carnivores, and in that once again primary carnivores, secondary carnivores, omnivores, all of them are going to get energy for all of these processes that is happening in this box. The supplier is the plant. For this energy that the plants have got, the supplier is once again solar energy. So please follow my sentence very carefully. Solar energy is absorbed by the plants. Plants are eaten by herbivores. Herbivores are eaten by carnivores. The process continues. The consumption takes place, and this keeps happening. This keeps happening. When this keeps happening, you can see this plants, when they are absorbing the solar energy and converting the solar energy into chemical energy in the form of glucose, they are going to give something to the environment. And at the same time, they are going to take something from the environment. So what is it going to give to the environment? As you already know, it is going to give carbon dioxide, it is going to take water, it is going to take oxygen, right? So that is the interrelationship that it has with the plants. Atmosphere has with the plants. Same is the case, you can see herbivores and carnivores also. They are also going to give something to the atmosphere, and atmosphere is also going to give something to them. So what are they going to give to the atmosphere? They are going to give carbon dioxide and they are going to take oxygen. They are going to get water, right? This is what it maintains a relationship with the atmosphere. So this process keeps continuing as long as solar energy is there, plants are there, as long as plants are there, herbivores and carnivores are there. As long as plants and herbivores and carnivores are there, they are going to have a relationship with the atmosphere, and this is a dynamic process that keeps continuing. Same is the way another dynamic process that keeps continuing is with the soil. You can see plants are going to have an interrelationship with the soil where plants are going to get, you can see here friends, you can see here herbivores and carnivores are not having anything with the soil here, but whereas a plant is having a interrelationship with the soil. That's the reason World Environment Day gives an important position to the plant, because plant has a, you can see, balanced relationship with all the other three components. It has relationship with sun, which is nothing but atmosphere, atmosphere, right? It is having a proper relationship with the soil, which is nothing but nutrients, and water, which is hydrosphere and lithosphere. So perfect balanced relationship only a plant is maintaining, right? So the plants are going to get all the nutrients and water from the soil. So that is how they are going to take it. So this keeps continuing. One or the other day, the plants that are producing the food and the herbivores and carnivores will die, right? Plants might not naturally die. Plants naturally won't die. Plant die only because of us or some or the other unwanted illegal activities that has happened. Plants can die, or naturally herbivores and carnivores can die, right? Without any explanation, they can die. So when they are going to die, they are not going to be going as a waste. There will be the action of this called as a detrivores, or also called as saprotrophs or decomposers. They are going to come into picture and they are going to decompose the dead plants and dead animals. So when they are going to decompose them, they are not going to waste the energy. They are going to give back the energy from the dead matter, either in the form of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and water into the atmosphere, or nutrients and water into the soil, and which will be once again taken up by the next generation of the plants and animals, and the entire relationship is going to be continuously existing on the ecosystem. Got it, friends? So this is a very, very complicated structure or a process that keeps running inside the environment, and this will not stop. The day any of these processes stop, the universe is going to end. So it's not going to stop. This relationship keeps continuing in the ecosystem. So why you are learning this is you need to understand that basically you need to respect this and allow it to continue. You cannot develop a technology which is going to disturb this equilibrium by any chance. If you develop any technology which is disturbing this interrelationship by any chance, your technology is labeled as eco non-friendly technology. So that's the reason you have to first of all understand the relationship that exists within a ecosystem. So we are